The roast chicken smelled wonderful, but the air in the dining room was thick with something else. Judgment. It was a regular Sunday family dinner, but this time I was shaking with nerves. I had spent months putting together my business plan, an ecotech platform that would track supply chain waste, and I was finally ready to share it. "It's called Earthlands," I announced, trying to sound confident. "It will save companies millions and help the planet." I passed the printouts around. My mother barely glanced at hers before setting it down. My father cleared his throat loudly. Then my older brother Omar started to laugh. It was a cruel, loud sound. "Amina, please," he chuckled. "An app to save the planet. You should be happy with your safe job, not dreaming up nonsense." My mother shook her head and sighed. "You're dream-sick, dear. Delusional. Business is serious, not for these silly little platforms." The mocking laughter from my siblings was too much. The humiliation burned in my cheeks. I gathered my papers, my hands trembling, and stood up to leave. Just as I reached the door, my father's booming voice stopped me. "Amina," he commanded. "Business is for men. I forbid you from bringing up these nonsense schemes at this table ever again." I drove away that night feeling completely broken. I thought my husband Nelson would comfort me, but when we got home, he agreed with my family. He sat on the edge of the bed, calm and cold. "They're right, Amina," he said. "You're wasting time. This is just a hobby." I argued, pleading with him to understand that this was my passion, my future. He wouldn't listen. He told me that if I insisted on following this fantasy, he would stop supporting me financially. We had shared accounts, but he controlled all the large transfers. He gave me an ultimatum. Drop Earthlands right now or he would cut me off. Then came the cruel twist. He demanded that I focus my energy on catering to his family's small, struggling manufacturing business instead. My own ambition was simply not allowed. I stared at him, realizing he wasn't my partner. He was just another member of my controlling family. I had to choose between my comfort and my dream. I took a deep breath. "No," I told him, my voice firm despite my fear. He didn't even pack a bag. He just looked disappointed and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The next morning, the bank accounts were indeed frozen. Nelson had been true to his word. With no access to our savings, I was forced to quickly move out of our large house and into a tiny, run-down rental apartment. The walls were thin and the floor slanted, but for the first time it was entirely mine. I didn't break down, though I wanted to. I used the anger from the family dinner and Nelson's betrayal as fuel. I set up my laptop on a folding table and started working. I spent every waking moment researching the global supply chain. I used scrap electronic parts from an old repair shop to build a rough version of my prototype. I ate cheap instant noodles and lived on coffee. I was exiled, but I was also free. As I researched, I found something amazing. Everyone was focused on the end product waste, but no one was tracking the waste created before the product was even made. There was a huge gap in the supply chain sustainability market. My platform, Earthlands, was the only one designed to fill it. I realized my silly little platform wasn't a dream. It was a billion-dollar idea. I worked like a machine for 3 months. My prototype was clunky and ugly, but the code worked perfectly. I needed money to survive and keep developing. I saw an advertisement for a small local pitch competition for startups. I submitted my application, figuring I had nothing to lose. When the day came, I stood on a small stage in a community center and gave my presentation. I was sweating, but I spoke from the heart about waste, efficiency, and my vision. When they announced the winners, I was shocked to hear my name. I had won the top prize, a small grant of $10,000. It felt like the world was finally telling me I was right. As I was packing up my laptop, a quiet, professional-looking woman approached me. She had sharp eyes and a kind smile. She didn't praise my platform. She asked hard questions about my financial model. Then she handed me a business card. It read, Ms. Duarte, Investor. My heart pounded. She was the first person outside of Maya to take me seriously. The next morning I met with Ms. Duarte at a coffee shop. She was direct and brilliant. She told me the grant was nice, but it wasn't enough to build a real company. She offered me serious seed funding, a huge amount of money, but with a major condition. I had to build a fully working, viable minimum viable product, MVP, in 6 months. I was heavily underqualified for the task. I was the CEO, the coder, the salesperson, and the janitor all in one. But my determination was absolute. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I accept." As I walked out of the meeting, excited and terrified, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Nelson's attorney. He had served me with official divorce papers. The timing was brutal, designed to distract me, but it actually made me stronger. I was no longer fighting for a marriage. I was fighting for my destiny. This divorce was the final fire under the boats. There was no going back to my old life now. With Ms. Duarte's money and my 6-month clock ticking, I started working with an intense focus I didn't know I had. I rented a cheap warehouse space and turned it into my office and laboratory. I slept on an old camp bed next to my desk, often working until 4 a.m. I ate the cheapest food possible, rice and beans, saving every cent for software licenses and equipment. I taught myself advanced coding, video editing, and server management by watching tutorials during short breaks. My entire world shrank to the glowing screen and the wire-filled prototype. I had no social life, and my family completely ignored me, which was actually a blessing. I had to burn the boats and commit entirely to Earthlands. The pressure was enormous, but I loved it. I built the MVP, a simple but powerful data dashboard. With just a month left, I needed a real-world test. I bravely reached out to a small corporate client that specialized in packaging. To my astonishment, they agreed to a 1-month trial. This was the moment of truth. The test run was successful beyond my wildest dreams. My Earthlands product tracked the client's packaging waste and streamlined their entire delivery process. It wasn't just small savings. It decreased their waste by almost 40% in record time. The CEO of the packaging company, a tough, older man, called me into his office at the end of the trial. He shook my hand and said, "Amina, you're not just good, you are a genius. This product will change our industry." He immediately signed a major contract. Suddenly, my little startup was gaining serious traction. Industry blogs started mentioning Earthlands. My success was no longer a secret. I received dozens of new inquiries, and my tiny apartment suddenly felt like the center of the world. Then Nelson reached out. He sent me a text message asking to catch up and said he was proud of my recent success. I read the message, remembered the frozen bank account, and the ultimatum, and promptly ignored him. He had chosen his side, and now I had chosen mine. My newfound success, of course, was intolerable to my family. My older brother, Omar, who ran his own failing business, was absolutely terrified that I would surpass him. He couldn't stand that his little sister was gaining fame and money. He decided to fight dirty. He launched a vicious slander campaign against me online. He posted false articles claiming I had stolen the core idea for Earthlands from the family's old tired manufacturing business. He said I was a thief and that I was using family secrets to build my company. The reveal was clear. He was trying to protect his own wounded ego and keep the family reputation pure. He was painting me as the heartless villain. The articles and social media posts spread quickly in our small community. It was a humiliating public attack. Then my phone started ringing constantly. Local reporters were calling my personal line, demanding a comment on my brother's claims. The pressure was intense, but I knew exactly how to handle it. Facing the media pressure felt like being thrown into a lion's den. I could have attacked Omar and my family back, but I chose a different path. I called a press conference and stood on the stage, calm and professional. I didn't mention my family's name once. Instead, I gracefully presented my receipts. I showed the media my original prototype sketches, the timestamps on the grant application, the registration documents for Earthlands, and the early emails with Ms. Duarte, all predating the family dinner and my divorce. The proof was undeniable. The concept was 100% mine. My calm and clear presentation worked perfectly. The public instantly turned in my favor. They saw a brilliant, hard-working woman being attacked by her petty, jealous family. The support was overwhelming. My brother's slander campaign backfired, making him look bitter and dishonest. Right after the press conference, my phone rang again. It wasn't a reporter this time. It was the CEO of a large tech company, a global leader in logistics, who wanted to start talks about a major partnership. My hard work was about to be rewarded in a way my family could never imagine. The talks with the huge tech company moved incredibly fast. They were impressed by my technology and even more impressed by my composure under media attack. Within weeks, we announced an official partnership. Their massive network and resources combined with my Earthlands platform. Suddenly, my little startup was no longer a small player. It became a huge market disruptor. Every major business magazine featured me. Analysts predicted Earthlands would revolutionize global supply chains. My company's valuation shot up overnight. I moved my office into a sleek, glass-walled skyscraper downtown. I was hiring staff and expanding internationally. I was living the life I had always dreamed of. One afternoon, as I was leaving my new office, I saw them. Standing awkwardly near the lobby entrance, pretending to look at a flower arrangement, were my parents. They looked older, smaller, and out of place in the shiny modern building. They were lurking, waiting to ambush me. My heart gave a strange, cold flutter. The ghosts of my humiliation had come home. I walked straight toward my parents, showing no surprise. I led them to a quiet coffee shop nearby. They started talking the moment we sat down, a practiced chorus of apologies. My mother dabbed her eyes. My father spoke first. His booming voice reduced to a humble whisper. "Amina, we are so proud of you," he said. "We just wanted what was best. We thought we were protecting you from failure." I listened calmly, my face showing no emotion. I allowed them to finish their long, hollow apology. I knew it wasn't real regret. It was just a desperate attempt to reconnect with my money. Then my father slid a proposal across the table. It was a formal document about share allocations. He explained that since I used family principles in my business, they deserved a 10% cut of my company. My mother quickly added, "Think of it as simply reuniting the family, dear. Blood is thicker than water." I looked down at the paper, then up at my father's expectant face. My voice was calm and steady, utterly emotionless. I took a sip of my tea, put the cup down carefully, and simply said, "No." My simple refusal sent my family into a complete rage. They were humiliated that I, the delusional daughter, had rejected their demand in a public cafe. My siblings, egged on by my furious parents, immediately went back on the attack. They flooded social media with nasty posts, accusing me of being cold-hearted, greedy, and having forgotten my roots. They claimed I was only successful because I had stolen money from my ex-husband, which was an absurd lie. My business partners, seeing the chaos, called me in for an emergency meeting. "Amina, they're creating serious noise," one partner said, looking worried. "Do you want us to involve our legal team? We could sue for defamation." I shook my head. Lawsuits take time and energy that I needed for my business. I had a better plan, a counterstrike that would completely crush their claims while making me look even better. Just as I was discussing the plan, Maya, my tech genius friend, burst into the room. "Amina, we have a serious problem," she whispered urgently. "Someone is trying to hack into our central financial systems right now." Instead of wasting energy on a lawsuit, I launched my counterstrike. I used a significant part of my company's profits to launch a huge charity fund in my family's hometown. The fund was dedicated to giving grants to women-led startups. I named it the Dreamers Fund. The response was overwhelming. My humble roots and genuine generosity were highlighted by every news outlet, making my family's online attacks look even more petty and cruel. People understood that I was giving back to the community they claimed I had forgotten. Funds began pouring in from other large companies and investors who admired my vision. While the public support was high, Maya and her team were dealing with a cyber attack. The hacker was sophisticated, constantly probing our defenses. We managed to stop the attack, but the source was still unknown. I knew it had to be someone close, someone who knew my weak points. I ordered a full, detailed security audit to trace the attack's origin. I wanted to know who was trying to sabotage my success, and I was sure the answer lay somewhere in my family's circle. The security audit took a tense week to complete, but the results were a shocking confirmation of my fears. Maya looked at the screen, tracing the digital breadcrumbs. The hack hadn't come from a foreign government or a rival company. It had originated from a server connected to Nelson's business. My ex-husband. The sheer audacity of the attack made me furious. I knew I couldn't ignore this. This was now a criminal act. I confronted Nelson in his small, dusty office. He looked pale and nervous when I showed him the audit report. He tried to deny it, stuttering and sweating. I cut him off, my voice ice cold. "Don't lie, Nelson. The digital signature leads straight here." He finally cracked, sinking into his chair. He confessed that he was involved, but then he dropped a bombshell. "It wasn't just me, Amina," he whispered. "Your brother Omar was the one who designed the attack. He paid me a huge sum to use my company's network as a shield." The realization hit me hard. My brother and ex-husband had joined forces, not just to steal money, but to destroy my company and my reputation completely. The criminal hack was just the beginning. The very next day, Nelson and Omar, through a shady lawyer they hired, filed a massive fraudulent lawsuit against me and Earthlands. They claimed that Nelson had been a de facto co-founder of the company, since he was my husband during the initial idea phase. They demanded a significant percentage of my company, claiming they were due billions. Their lawyer, a slick, aggressive man, even held a press conference. He threatened to expose secret documents that would prove I had used marital funds and family knowledge to start the company, which he claimed was illegal. I knew it was all lies, but the lawsuit was designed to freeze my assets and scare my investors. This was a full-scale legal war. Nelson and Omar were desperate, throwing everything they had at me, but they failed to realize I had prepared for every possible attack. They didn't know I had kept every single piece of paper, every receipt, and every digital file from the very beginning. The court hearing was the most intense day of my life. Omar and Nelson sat across from me, looking arrogant and confident. Their lawyer presented his secret documents, which were mostly vague financial statements. I remained calm. When it was my turn, I didn't rely on expensive legal arguments. I presented the undeniable truth. I showed the court every email with timestamps, proving the core concept was developed months before I married Nelson. I showed the judge my hand-drawn prototypes, dated and notarized from before the infamous family dinner. I presented the small grant application and Ms. Duarte's seed funding contract, all signed after Nelson walked out. My evidence was a perfect, unbroken chain of proof. The judge didn't even need a recess. He looked at Nelson and Omar with pure disgust and instantly threw the case out. As he left the bench, he made a chilling comment, looking at the defense lawyer. "I highly suspect criminal cyber activity was involved in preparing this frivolous suit. The authorities should investigate the plaintiff's business practices." The judge's hint was all the authorities needed. Within days, police and federal authorities raided Omar's and Nelson's business offices. They were looking for evidence of the cyber attack, corporate sabotage, and the fraudulent lawsuit preparation. The shockwaves were immediate and massive. Their business assets were frozen, stopping them from accessing any money to pay their debts or their lawyers. They were facing criminal charges for fraud and hacking. The news was huge in the business community. My dignity was fully restored, and my reputation soared even higher. The sheer injustice I had suffered, followed by my calm, legal victory, made me a hero to countless people. Then Nelson called me late one night. He was crying, truly broken. He begged me to intervene with the police, to tell them that it was all a misunderstanding. I listened to his pathetic pleas but remained silent. He desperately wanted me to save him, but I knew I couldn't. I refused to help Nelson. I told him he had made his choice 2 years ago when he walked out and froze my accounts. My refusal made him finally confess the deepest betrayal. He admitted he hadn't just joined Omar out of greed. He confessed that my father had secretly approached him after our separation. My father had promised Nelson a huge block of shares in the family business if he would quickly remarry my cousin, Anya. The plan was to bring my cousin into the family as a business partner to replace me. "Your father said you were a lost cause," Nelson confessed, his voice thick with tears. "And Anya, she's already pregnant with my child." The revelation hit me like a physical punch. It wasn't just about money. My father had been actively plotting to replace me, erase me, and ensure my bloodline never touched the family wealth again. Nelson's final confession only solidified my resolve. I had been right all along to trust no one but myself. The news about the arrests and frozen assets completely destroyed my family's reputation. Their small manufacturing business, already struggling from Omar's incompetence, began collapsing. Their long-standing clients pulled out, unable to deal with the constant scandals. The phone call I expected finally came. It was my mother, sobbing uncontrollably. For once, her tears sounded real. "Amina, we were so wrong," she cried. "We were horrible to you. We let your father and Omar control everything." She finally admitted they had treated me horribly. The family business was now almost bankrupt and facing massive debt. She didn't ask for a loan. She asked me, the dream-sick daughter, to buy them out. She said I was the only one who could save the employees and the legacy my grandfather built. I listened to her pleas, felt the cold weight of the years of humiliation, and knew I was holding all the cards. I agreed to the purchase, but I gave them an offer they couldn't refuse, and couldn't easily swallow. I offered to buy the controlling interest in the family company, paying off all its debts and securing the jobs of the employees. However, there was a non-negotiable condition. My brother Omar and my father had to permanently and legally relinquish all rights to the company, including their executive positions and their family legacy claims. They had to sign documents ensuring they could never interfere with the business again. They fought for 2 days, yelling and demanding, but they were completely out of options. The company was drowning, and I was the only lifeboat. Finally, defeated and humiliated, they reluctantly signed. With the stroke of a pen, the family business that had scorned me was now entirely under my control. It was the most satisfying moment of my career, proving that competence beats bloodline every single time. My first act was to revitalize the failing manufacturing company. I didn't keep the old, tarnished family name. I rebranded the entire operation under the banner of Earthlands. I brought in new eco-friendly machinery, implemented my logistics software, and trained the staff in modern supply chain methods. The employees, who had been nervous about the takeover, treated me like a hero. I saved their jobs and brought a fresh, exciting future to the failing business. I proved I could not only start a new company but also rescue an old one. The news spread globally. My reputation as a corporate savior and an ethical leader was solidified. Just 6 months after acquiring the old family business, a powerful international conglomerate approached me. They were offering a massive billion-dollar acquisition deal for the entire Earthlands ecosystem, my new company and my revitalized old one. It was the ultimate validation. The acquisition went through quickly and smoothly. The final papers were signed, and the money hit my account. I was a billionaire overnight. It was an incredible, surreal feeling. The nonsense schemes that my family mocked had created more wealth than all of their manufacturing businesses combined over 2 generations. I decided to host a small, formal celebration in the old family boardroom, now beautifully renovated. I made sure my parents and siblings were invited. They arrived awkwardly, dressed in their finest clothes, trying desperately to play the part of the supportive family. They cornered me quickly. My father, in a voice dripping with entitlement, declared, "Amina, we need to discuss the shares. Now that you're a billionaire, you can see that blood is thicker than water. We deserve a cut of the acquisition." His entitlement, even after everything, was breathtaking. I gathered my family in the beautifully renovated boardroom. I stood at the head of the long mahogany table, exactly where my father used to sit and dismiss my ideas. I was calm, without a trace of anger. I looked at each of them. I started talking, my voice low and steady. I didn't yell. I simply recounted every single humiliation they had inflicted. I spoke about the day my father forbade me from speaking about business. I spoke about Nelson freezing my accounts. I described my mother calling me dream-sick. I mentioned Omar's slander and the criminal hacking plot. They sat in utter silence, unable to meet my eyes. Their shame was palpable, a heavy weight in the room. When I finished, I didn't ask for an apology. I simply slid a single, thin folder of legal paperwork across the table. "This is why you are here," I stated. "You are here because I owe you nothing," I stated clearly. "When you forced me out, you signed away any claim you had to my success. When you signed the documents to sell your failing company, you willingly relinquished all future rights." My father stared at the paperwork, defeated. I told them that because I was not a heartless person, I had a final offer. I offered to establish dignified retirement salaries for my parents, enough to live comfortably, but not a cent more. Omar and my siblings would receive nothing. "You will receive no shares," I finished. "This billion-dollar company is mine, built on the strength you forced me to find." My father finally broke. He didn't cry tears of regret for how he treated me. He cried tears of pure, furious rage because he had lost his control and his fortune forever. They left the boardroom defeated, their faces gray with failure. With the final stand over, I stepped into my new life of peace and immense freedom. I quickly finalized my divorce from Nelson, making sure he faced the consequences of his actions. I sold the huge house he and I had shared and bought a beautiful modern home overlooking the city, one that felt like a quiet fortress. I used my new wealth to immediately invest in women-led tech startups, mentoring young founders and ensuring they had the support I never did. My late grandmother's best friend, Ms. Duarte, revealed her secret. She explained that my grandmother, knowing my genius, had made her promise to find and support me when the time was right. It was the best kind of final twist. I stood on a huge stage at a global tech conference a year later, speaking to thousands of young girls about entrepreneurship. I looked out at the audience, feeling totally empowered, and spoke the final truth I had learned. Your dream doesn't need permission.